Welcome to this session hosted by me, StockRFX. The topic for this lesson today is going to be what is fractal price and how can you start to learn it. Whether you already understand what fractals are, whether you're just starting to come into the whole fractal side of the market, regardless of where you're at, this is going to be useful for you. Now, what we're going to do in this session, we're going to show you a couple of ways that you can begin to understand fractals. The first way is using higher time frames to then identify fractal price and then confirming it on the smaller time frames. Okay. Now again, it's nothing crazy. It's super simple stuff. You guys will all be able to do this. And then we're also going to show you as well how you can start to identify smaller price action and then visualize what it looks like on a bigger time frame so that you don't have to keep crossing over into multiple time frames to get your overall bias. So guys, let's start this off with a basic diagram to explain to everybody that doesn't know what fractal price action is exactly what it is. Okay, so for any given move in a market, we have a trending move. We all know this. It's simple, super easy stuff. We all know this. But what happens inside of these moves? We have individual trends which create these moves, right? Meaning that each point in the market will have some sort of fractal price. Now again, fractals, for anyone that doesn't know what it is essentially a miniature version of what's happening on a bigger time frame. So if we take this away from what we can see here, the upwards push, you can clearly see we have a breaker structure, a pullback to the area that caused the break, and then in theory we should see a continuation, right? On the same thing is happening on the bigger time frame. We've had structural breaks from a given area, whether it be this high, whether it be this high. Most of the time you will see a break and a pullback, right? So all we're doing is we're identifying bigger time frame structures like this. We're then confirming the moves with the fractal price action which occurs inside. So in other words, a miniature version of the upwards trend occurring inside of a POI would give us confidence to go long on a position, for example, from here. So really simple, easy understanding. Fractal price action is happening on every time frame, bigger and smaller, regardless of where you look for it. So let's get down onto the charts and I'll show you guys the first easy and simple way that you can begin to identify what fractal price is and how you can start to practice and use it in a real world scenario. So we can take any of these tops. Now what we can do is take a look at, for example, this top here. We can take a look at this top. We can even look at some of the bottoms. So down here, for example, and down here. This one too, and we can look at this one too. Right now, every single structural point inside the market has fractal price happening in it as long as you're looking on a big enough time frame. Now, even on the 1 minute, there's fractal stuff happening as well at every single point. Now, for this example, this is going to be a really, really good little tip for you guys to be able to understand how fractal price action works. So we're actually going to start off on this high here, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into this. And I want you guys to really think about what it is that you're seeing. Really think about what you can understand from any given point in price. Now, as we all understand, price doesn't have to move in the way that we want it to move. It can do what it likes, when it likes. It's just a case of if it behaves in a certain way, we, in theory, should be reacting to it in the same way every time. Therefore, sticking to the consistencies of what we know about our trading plan and our trading strategy. Now, everyone has different trading plans. Everyone has different trading strategies. So these rules may not apply to everyone. But overall, you will be able to take a good understanding away from this. So we're on the 4-hour chart right now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut this back so price doesn't run around. And we're just going to look at this high. Now again, regardless of what it's tapping into over here, we're just focusing on what's happening at this high. And then we're going to go down and we're going to have a look at the next high, for example, and we're going to keep working our way down so you guys can understand exactly what we're seeing. So a really easy tool that can help a lot is the highlighter tool. It allows you to dab price just like you were at bingo. Hitting those numbers, you can essentially put your highs and lows in with those without being too full on and having stuff all over your charts, okay? So the first thing that we want to be assessing is how can we start to understand what's happening here. Now on this time frame, it's not giving us a huge amount, but what I need you to imagine is that this is a 1 minute chart. We know it's a 4 hour. You know what, we're going to actually go to the 8 hour. We know that this is a 8 hour chart, but we're going to pretend it's the 1 minute, right? That is another really good tip that will help you guys. Always pretend that every time frame is the same. We know it's not, but pretend it is. Obviously take your confluences from them, depending on what the time frames are showing you, but make sure that you do not consciously make a point of this is a bigger time frame, I need to analyze it differently, because that's not the case. Overall, every time frame needs to be analyzed the same way. So when we're looking at this high here, you can see that we put in a high and we put in a low. Yeah. So what does that give us straight away? It gives us a range which pushed us down. Now we're not sure if we broke any smaller time frame structures in here because we can't see on this time frame, but we're starting to understand the fractal price action and how it moves. So for any move, we want to be assessing what we can see. Now we can see here that we came from a low, pushed up to a high, and from that area, we have then started to break down. Now, how do we know we've started to break down? We know we've started to break down because when we come to this schematic right here, we can see the high was taken and then a low was created, which gives us a range, as I stated then. For any range, we'd expect it to run to the top of that area. So in this case, back to the top of the area and then break down. You can see this is clearly happening here, but there's more going on here than that. So how can we assess what we're seeing? Look at the individual candles. Now guys, this is something that will take time, but we're going to show you here, coming down these time frames, how you can start to understand it. And this is exactly one of the easiest ways that I have found, being able to analyze price. So we understand we put in a high, we put in a low. We've then come back and we put in a new high, but it's not a higher high. We then put in a low. We then put in a high, which did not surpass the last. We then put in a low. So straight away, we know from this point, price is trending down. We put in a new low here, price is trending down in this small area. Just from these two candles, we can see this. How can we then start to confirm this? Come down to a smaller time frame. What's it doing? It's showing us exactly what we could see from the fractal point. So that was the high, that was the new low, that was the previous low. So already you're starting to see how just from the two candles we were identifying price breaking lower, pulling back, dropping down. So we already had a understanding that price was moving down just from two candles. Now in this case we didn't get the classic pullback, push down that we'd expect, but we could see from the bigger time frame itself, when we come back to this area again, we can see the low, the low, then a new high, and then price pushes down. Now in this case we can't see too much, but on the smaller time frames it shows us exactly what we thought was happening. When we come down again to a smaller time frame, it shows us in more detail what's happening. So notice what we're seeing now. We're seeing an area we could possibly get an entry. So notice what we did. We went from 4 candles in this area down to a 15-minute, which gives us multiple candles, which we can then confirm an entry for what we thought we were seeing. Notice how it's the same thing. So we did break structural lows here, gave us a high and a low, which we identified at the beginning. Price pulled back. After it pulled back, it broke the low, it ran back to the area that broke that structure and then continued down. So that's our first little area that we've already been able to identify through 2 candles on the 8-hour time frame, that price is trending down and possibly could give us an entry. So already you can start to understand what fractals are showing us. So let's go back to the 8-hour time frame and find the next high, and we'll mark it up the same. Again, pretending it's the 1 minute time frame, understanding what we're seeing, understanding how price is moving. So in this case, we took out a low here on the 8-hour time frame. We can see that low right here. That low was taken, yeah? So what does price normally like to do? For anyone that hasn't already checked out the order block lesson, make sure you go and check that out. But price likes to, a lot of the time, run back to the area that caused the break. Now, most of the time, there will be price action around the kind of low area. So in this case here, I'll walk you through why it's that area in a second. And it will normally run back to it and continue. So how can we identify prices running back there? Again, we're on the 8-hour time frame. Let's highlight some of our structural points. So look at what price is doing. So we have a high, we have a low. We have a high, which isn't higher than the last low. We then have a higher than the last high, sorry. We then put in a new low, which isn't lower than the last low. So we are still technically ranging here. Price then breaks out, gives us a new low and a new high. Great. It then comes up and gives us a new high and a new low. So anybody that's already seen any kind of work that we have done on the live stream, you will know that if we have a move like this, for example, where price pushes down before an up move, this will be an order block on a bigger time frame. In this case, we're looking at bigger time frame stuff, so it will be an order block on a smaller time frame. So right here, the low to the high, yeah, that would be our order block. Now you can see price tapped into it perfectly, and I'll show you now exactly how we identify this. But first, we're going to highlight the highs and lows in here to give you guys a nice understanding of how you can start to assess fractal price action and the structures without having clear structural story presented to you on a small time frame. So we put in a low which clears this low here. Price then puts in a high, puts in a low, puts in again here a high which didn't clear it. We then put in a low. Notice what we're seeing already, the upwards shift. Yeah, price doesn't like to draw very well on here. We then put in a low. We then put in a high which took out this high. What did we do after that? We came back down, we put in a low. We then came back, put in a lower high. We then put in a low again, didn't break it, until we get what? Price comes below these points. So what does that tell us? It tells us the classic story that we always look for, which is price pulling in, putting in a low, taking the high, and then taking the low, which gives us what? It gives us the key part of the Wyckoff schematic that we always look for, which is a liquidation of a given high and then the break of a given low, in this case this low here. So then price pulls back to the area that caused that break and drops down. So now when we come down to the lower time frames, let's see if what I've just pointed out to you here is exactly what's going on. So we'll start off on the 1 hour time frame. So what can we see here? Here is our area that broke structure down because it powered price below. Yeah. Price has then tapped into it. Now this wasn't that exact because we couldn't exactly see what we were looking at. We were going off of raw structure that was right there on the 8 hour time frame. We have then had exactly what I explained. Price came. Now these dots aren't going to correlate that well because of the way price, the data lines up on different time frames. Now, let's get these lines out of the way and we'll walk through what we have here. Now, remember what I said when we were on the 8 hour time frame. We had price put in a low. We then had price put in a high. Price then put in a new low, then a high which didn't surpass the previous high. We then came and put in a low, which was only wick. It didn't break structure properly. It was only wick. We then put in a high, continually putting in new highs at that area. There was probably more of a new spike than anything. And then we put in a low, we put in a high, we put in a low. Now at this point, that is where we can start to see structural points breaking. Right there. You can see price breaks down. So what does it give us? It gives us a range. Drops down, pulls back to the area and drops away. So you can already see from the 8 hour time frame how I'm able to determine 1 hour structures. When we come down to the 15 minute now, look how all of a sudden does this seem a little bit easier to trade now? If we have a given area like so, yeah, we wanted price to tap into this because it broke structure lower, so we'd expect it to come into this area. When it comes in, it gives us what? The classic move, like I explained. Price coming up, putting in a low, putting in a high, taking the liquid off of this high, then putting in a new low, running back to the area that caused the breakdown, which is this area here, then continuing lower. When we pull this away, what does it show us? It shows us the same thing that we always look for. The liquidatable high, the breaker structure to the low, the pullback to the area that caused the breakdown, right? So as you can already see, this is a real easy way to get into understanding individual candle structures, because if you can do it on an 8-hour time frame, for example here, what is the difference between that and a 1 minute chart? There is no difference. There is no difference at all. It's the same thing. The only difference is you're looking at a bigger time frame. So straight away you can already start to apply this to your chart without even having to sniff at the 1 minute time frames. The 1 minute time frames are a very quick and choppy environment to be trading in. So if you aren't super confident, then it can become a bit of a whirlwind and you will end up just being lost in the overall movements. So let's drop back onto our chart and find another couple of highs that we can look at here. So we can take a look at this low right here. And we can see what price is showing us. Again, regardless of what it's tapping into, we're looking at fractal price here, so we don't need to worry too much about that. Now, what I really want you to think about is fractal price as a whole is happening everywhere. So it's happening here. It's happening, a bigger move itself is happening here. Price tapping in, yeah? So we have exactly what I've already explained to you guys once or twice now. We have the low, we have a high, we have a low. That high gets broken. Price pulls back to the area that caused the break and then continues higher. So what are we seeing? It's the same thing. What are we having at the base of this move? More than likely a miniature version of what I've just highlighted here. So a low, a high, a low, a new high, a low coming back to take the area that caused the push, and then a continuation. So let's mark up the small area. Let's mark up the fractal price itself. Right here. What can we see? Now, to a lot of you, you're probably thinking, all I see is candlesticks. That's the idea. That is the idea. So, we had a liquidation of the low, right? And then in turn, we had what? So we had our low and our high put in. We have a low, which didn't surpass the previous low. We then have a high, which does what? Takes out the structure. Right, so we're talking mini moves here, miniature moves. So let me just get rid of this for a second. Let's make sure this actually broke the high. Yes, so we did break the high, just about. We broke the high, right? So we now understand that we had a high and a low put in. We had a high which broke. We then have what? Price pulling back to an area that caused that breakup to then put in a new low and overall a new high, which you can obviously see pulling away massively here. So let's go down to the hour and see what it looks like on the hour. I know what I've done. I didn't rewind price here, but we'll go and find it anyway. Where were we? Further back. Here we go. Right. Look at what we have. Here we are down on the hour time frame. Exactly what we called. We had the low tapping into the liquid. We then had a high put in. That gives us what? A range. Price pulled back down, didn't surpass the low. It then comes up and takes out the high. Price then pulls back to the area that caused the push up in the first place, giving us fractal price action inside of the overall move that we can identify here as the same thing. A low, a high, breaking it, clearing the high, pulling back to the area that caused the breakup in the first place. So can you guys see exactly where I'm going with this? You can understand how price is moving just by using the bigger time frames, and then bring it down, 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 all the way to the point where you're understanding smaller time frame price action itself. So let's have a look on the 15 minute here and just see how it looks on the 15, and then we can move on to a different section. But you can already see just by simply doing this, what I'm doing here, it can show you so much as to what's going on. So same things occurring. We have price doing the same thing like I explained. We have microstructures in here that are broken, so on the smaller time frames, which we're not going to go down to, You can see the break, the range, the low was protected, the high was liquidatable, it got liquidated, price pulls back, continues. Beautiful. Really easy setups. Nice. That's what we like to see. So let's find somewhere else. Let's go on to the 8-hour time frame again, and we'll find another area. So we're going to show you one more example of this, and then we're going to go on to the bigger time frame to, smaller time frame to bigger time frame understanding. So let's take a look down here. Let's have a look at this area here. Again, regardless of what it's tapped into over here, we're going to look at what we can see here. So let's run up what we have. So the first thing that we can look at, what is price doing into here? We have the low, the high, the low, the high. Yeah? Which then gives us what? Gives us a range at the top. So price has come up, taken the liquid off of this high, off of a smaller high in here. We then have a low put in. We then have a high put in. We didn't break structure. We then broke below, structural break. Pull back to the area that caused the structural break, continuation down, putting in a new low, new high, new low, continually moving down, right? Really, really awkward to look at on this time frame, but when we come down to the hour, what do we have? In this case, it doesn't look like we actually broke that low here. So the fractal, well, actually, we did break the low. We did break it. Barely, but broke it nonetheless. So the same thing occurs. We put in a high. We put in a low. Price run higher. There is, so do you remember what I said just before we came down? I said this is probably taking the liquid off of something else. That's the high it took the liquid off. It then comes down, breaks the structure. What does it do? Pulls back to the area that caused the break, runs down, creating a new low. Beautiful. Again, super easy to understand, giving you a nice, easy way of being able to work your way into understanding fractals without having to sit on the 1 minute, absolutely bleeding your eyeballs out, trying to work out what's going on and constantly being slapped in the face by the 1 minute price action. Because at the end of the day, the 1 minute is the smallest and most diluted amount of data you can look at. So therefore, the signals it shows you and the stuff it tells you is holding less weight inside of the market. The bigger the time frame, the more data you have, the more you can take from what it's showing you. That's why people say follow the overall trend, because it's all of the data collected over time. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples in here of the same thing occurring. Why price is fractal. Right here, what do we have at this low? It's a very nice example of what we're showing you here. So we have a low, we have a high. So we understand that that liquidated. We then broke the structure of the high. Low comes back. So we've had a break, then we have what? A pullback to the area that caused the break, and then what does price do? Takes off, continually pulling back until it's ready to hit a bigger time frame area, as we show here, to then drop away. On the 1 minute, this will give you more refined areas, so there'll probably be an order block sitting at the top of here, but we're not going to go down crazy low time frames and look at that like that. Okay, so that is an easy way, guys, for you to be able to start to learn fractal price, and you can see how on every time frame it is present. Now, even if we come back out to the 8-hour time frame and we look at what we're having overall for any of these moves, you will see the same thing. What are we having? We have a breakdown, we have a push, we had a high that was liquidated, we had a structure that was broken, we have an area that caused price to break below. What does price do? Run back to it, right? So the same thing that we were seeing on the smaller time frames in these little areas, that price is giving us exactly the same picture on a bigger time frame. Okay, so what we're going to do now that we've run through those areas, we are going to go to another area in price, and we're going to take a look at how you can start to identify smaller time frame price action and correlate it with bigger time frame price action. So instead of doing what we've just been doing and marking the fractal price action on a big time frame and then working our way down, we're going to start small and we're going to work our way up. So in this case, we're going to delete this and start from the beginning, And we're going to go from, let's say the 5 minute. We're going to go to the 5 minute, and we're going to work through what we have and how we can structurally identify this. Now guys, one thing I need you to really understand with this isn't going to give you exact candlesticks, and it's not going to give you exact price action to match on a bigger time frame, but it will give you a nice idea of what you can see and what you can expect on the bigger time frame. So all we're looking at, guys, is we are looking at individual moves. Okay, so in this case, we're going to be looking at this area, and we're going to move down and look at some of the other areas, and we're going to highlight some stuff. So we're going to do it in a real simple, easy way. Now, we're just going to use this box tool, and we're going to highlight some of these moves. Now, you guys would have seen me doing this before. You would have obviously seen me marking up areas, but you wouldn't have seen me marking up individual candles like this. So first of all, we're going to mark up all the downwards moves, and we're going to show you exactly what we are talking about here. So we have 2 downwards candles. So what does this make this one in the middle? Makes that an upwards candle, right? So we're just going to highlight that green. Now the same thing's going to occur. You can have another green candle here. You can have another green candle here. You can have another green candle here. Exactly the same as you will have on the smaller time frame, a little red candle here. Let's change this. A little red candle here. Now, see how these are different sizes? So when you come to the bigger time frame, it's not going to correlate perfectly, but it gives you an idea of what you're seeing. You're then going to have the same thing occurring here. A smaller red candle, which broke structure. We're then going to have a little green candle in here, but we're not going to mark that up right now. And then we're going to have the same thing happening. A big red candle. Again, another red candle with a small candle in between. So what can we expect from price if it comes back to one of these areas, if we're marking them off like this? Like this, for example. What is that? On a bigger time frame, what would that be? It would be an order block. Price ran to that order block, gave us a smaller time frame reaction. It wasn't the reaction we were looking for, but it gave us a small time frame reaction. So we're going to come up to a bigger time frame now, and we're going to see how this correlates with what we have. So again, we need slightly bigger than this. Let's go 4 hour. There we go. Look, again, it's not going to give you exact moves, but think about what we've highlighted here. We highlighted sell candle, sell candle, sell candle. What do we have? 3 sell candles. We highlighted a bearish candle, then 2 bullish candles. What do we have? Bullish candle, bearish candle, bullish candle. We highlighted all of these based off of a small time frame understanding of the way that price is moving. Now, were we on the 10 minute or were we on the 5 minute? I think we were on the 5. No, we were on the 10. So already you can see just from here, we can start to correlate what we have on this time frame with what we can expect to see on a bigger time frame. Therefore, meaning if we have a very predominant down move here, for example, or a very predominant up move, so in this case right here, we could say, well, this is the last major order block before price dropped. So when we pull this out, we'd expect a reaction at the 50%, right? We'd expect a reaction at the 50%. It's exactly the same as if we saw price action down here and we said, you know, this order block, we want this area to react, and we'd pull that out. So straight away, you can already see exactly what I'm showing you here and how price is displaying itself over the smaller time frames, but still correlating with the fractal nature of the market, just in reverse. You're identifying smaller time frame moves to give you the bigger time frame idea and bias. So guys, I hope that has helped you guys understand what fractal price action is and how you can start to understand it. Remember, the main thing that we are always looking for is the same system. We're looking for a push up which takes out liquid of a given area, or a push down, for example, and then a pullback and continuation. So all we're looking for is a liquidation of a high, so like this, then a break of a low, a pullback to the area, and then a drop away. As we showed you on many examples in the beginning of this session, you can continually do this across every single time frame. So hopefully you can take some of these little tricks that I've shown you and start to understand how you can apply this on a small time frame, how you can also apply a small time frame to understand a bigger picture, and then moving forwards continually have an understanding of what price is showing you regardless of your time frame. So guys, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you haven't already, join the Discord. We are always hosting free lessons. But until the next one, guys, peace out.